Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the bridge. It's good to see you guys. And a quick reminder before we jump in today, we have a Thanksgiving worship service focusing on gratitude and rest that will happen tonight at 6 o'clock. And would love to invite you guys back for that. We'll do kind of the worship part of that in this space, and then there is a dessert fellowship in the fellowship hall after that. So anyway, 6 o'clock, that happens. And in the way of call to worship today, I've discovered that some people are really good at starting things and not always so good at finishing things. And when I say some people, I may be talking kind of to myself right now, who has started 3 or 4 different things and realized that I haven't finished those. Or if you ask me the question of what book are you reading, I can share with you 3 or 4 different books. And then if you tell me, so which one do you like the best? Or are you in the last chapter of any of them? My answer right now would be, actually, no. We get distracted sometimes. We lose focus. And it's fun to start things, but it's really, really hard to finish them. And it's funny when we talk about to-do lists and books, but there are other things that we really actually have no control over at all. That there are variables at work. There's relationships we're in, and there may be a strain or a struggle. There's physical health that looks really, really good until it's not. You look like you're solid and centered, and then all of a sudden, mentally, you just skid. You're excited to get up in the morning, and then all of a sudden, it's hard to have the feet hit the floor. Guys, if it depends on us to finish what we start, we're lost. We don't have hope. We don't have a chance. But we're going to learn today in this very famous Daniel 6, Daniel in the Lion's Den chapter, that God finishes what we can't finish. And in Hebrews 12, verses 1 and 2, we hear these familiar words. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith. Another translation says, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. He finished what we could never finish. And now he sits before the Father, and as we gather here in worship, he prays for us, that we would remember that he began our faith and he will be faithful to finish it. So now in this already not yet tension of this moment, let's build our life on him. And let's see him magnified in us, because he finishes everything he starts. I invite you to stand. Feel free to greet someone near you, and we'll worship through song.
Suddenly articulate with 1,000 tongues to lift one cry. Well, then from north to south and east finds its inmost melody in every human heart's native cry. Oh, then in one enraptured hymn of praise, we'll see Christ be magnified, be magnified. In all, Christ be magnified, and let his praise arise. Oh, Christ be magnified in me. In all, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Oh, Christ be magnified in me. Be magnified in all I do, in all I say, God. No, I won't bow. No, I won't bow to idols. I'll stand strong and worship you. And if it puts me in the fire, I'll rejoice 'cause you're there too. No, I won't be formed by feelings. I'll hold fast to what is true. And if your cross brings transformation, I'll be crucified with you. Because death is just a doorway into resurrection life. If I join you in your sufferings, then I'll join you in your rise. And when you return in glory with all the angels and the saints, my heart will still be singing, my soul will be the same. In all, Christ be magnified, let's let his praise arise. Oh, Christ be magnified in me. In all, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Oh, Christ be magnified in me. In all, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Oh, Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Oh, Christ be magnified in me. How great the chasm that lay between us, how high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Oh, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin. He bared my shame. cross is spoken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Oh, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. And hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your very body began to breathe. Out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your very body began to breathe. And out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Oh, Jesus, yours is the victory. Yes. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Oh God, you are my living hope. At this time, we're gonna dismiss the kiddos. Anybody else dealing with like a nasty cough? Anybody? No? Just me? Cool. Hey, I wanted to just take a few minutes and just kind of share something that I think is for us here today. I'm kind of like anybody kind of dictated by their calendar, their routine, their kids' routine, right? It's like every Monday we do this, every Tuesday, you know, and you kind of get into this like, and it's not a bad thing. As a matter of fact, me as like this unorganized creative, I need structure, and my wife is amazing at it, and I'm terrible. So thank the Lord for her. She's kind of like the Holy Spirit. But one thing that I think is like an unfortunate thing is sometimes like church or like Jesus time gets kind of like slotted on that Sunday morning spot. And I have this thing that happens in my brain, and I'm like being vulnerable telling you all this. Like I kind of have like this Jesus switch that I can just like turn on and off, and I'm not proud of that, right? That I can just like, okay, I know I'm leading Sunday morning, or I know that we've got, this specific set of time or whatever, and you can just kind of, time to think about the Lord, or time to go to church, or time to oh yeah, we should probably be reading our Bible now, right? And I think what it is, it's like we were kind of, I was planning the worship set today, and we're in Daniel, and it's Daniel, right, like in the lion's den, right? How do you plan a worship set around that? Like, he's a conqueror. Yeah, that would be fine. But I actually think today we're supposed to be reminded about the gospel. Like, I think we're supposed to be reminded about salvation. And I think it would be a bummer if we left here and weren't reminded about that, or weren't encouraged by that, or weren't like made joyous because of that. There's this like thing that happens when you experience grace and love and mercy for the first time, and it's just like this outpouring of your heart, and you're just like, man, I love you, Lord, right? And I think sometimes when we get into like church calisthenics, or we get into this rhythm of the calendar or whatnot, like, can I just tell someone here today that the gospel is for you? Like, salvation is for you, you who have believed for 24 hours and you who have believed 50 plus years. Like, Jesus' mercy, like he sacrificed for you today. Like, there is love and grace and kindness and mercy available for us today. And I'm praying that if we like keep singing that and keep reminding ourselves and keep believing that no longer this Jesus switch will be in our minds. That it's just I wake up and you're my first thought. I wake up and your gospel compels me to behave this way, or your kindness compels me to treat someone this way. And man, I think that would be a beautiful thing. So I'm kind of speaking that over us here today, that the gospel, the thing that this church is built upon, would find us anew here today. That it would invigorate us anew. And not that we're chasing these highs, but I want to be rooted in the truth, in the gospel of Jesus Christ, the death and resurrection. This is one of my favorite old songs. How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that He should give His only Son to make a wretch His treasure. How great the pain of searing loss, the Father turns His face away, as wounds which mar the chosen one bring many sons to glory. Behold the man upon the cross, my sin upon His shoulders. Ashamed, I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers. It was my sin that held Him there until it was accomplished. His dying breath has brought me life. I know that it is finished. gives no power, no wisdom, but I will boast in Jesus Christ. His death and resurrection. Why should I gain from His reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all His wounds have paid my ransom. I will not boast in anything, no gifts, no power, no wisdom, but I will boast in Jesus Christ, His death and resurrection. Why should I give I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart. His wounds have paid my ransom, but this I know with all my heart. His wounds have paid my ransom, but this I know with His wounds have paid my ransom, but this I know with all my heart. His wounds have paid my God, thank you for meeting us here today. Thank you for salvation. And that is the magnitude of that finds its way into our hearts, Lord. Let it stay. God, we love you so much. And I pray that as we as this like miracle that's happening now, that people still gather to sing your name, to sing your praises thousands of years later. That we recognize the symphony of the kingdom and that we are a part of that. So Jesus, turn our eyes to you when temptation comes. Turn our eyes to you when hardship comes, when doubt creeps in, Father. We just look to the cross and that it sustains us. And it's in your name I pray today, Jesus. Amen. Y'all may be seated.
So I heard someone say one time that one of the most important prayers that a Christian can pray is that the gospel will stay sweet. So Nick, Tyler, Eddie, thank you for pointing us to that good news that we have been saved when we were far away, when we were powerless, when we were rebels. We've been saved and rescued. I also love how, Nick, you spoke that it doesn't matter whether you've been saved 24 hours or 50 plus years, that the gospel would stay sweet. that we would still be gripped by the truth that we have been rescued. And one of the Bible stories that nearly all of us have heard before, no matter it seems how churched or not so churched we've been, is the story of Daniel and the lion's den. And if you grew up in church, picture's worth 1,000 words, and there's pictures. You get a picture of Daniel. Actually, most of the pictures I remember as a young man, and him walking around amongst the lions that are laying down peacefully and sleeping. And I always think, until I do some physical activity that reminds me I'm not 20-something years old anymore. So maybe because it seems as though Daniel was 80-something, even in the lion's den, but he can look at himself and still picture himself as that young man. But chances are, chronologically, in the history of the Bible, he was significantly older and up there in age. I shared in the call to worship today that God promises that he is both the author and the finisher of our faith. That Paul says in Philippians 1:6 that he is faithful to finish the good work that he starts in you and in me. And he will do that. We have continued as a church family to pray for our dear sister Jane Codris, who is nearing that moment when God calls her home. But the moment she was diagnosed with cancer, her testimony to me and to others was, I'm just praying that my faith won't fail and that Jesus will still shine brightly through my life. And God is doing that in miraculous ways because he's faithful and he promises. And when we have that moment of doubt and struggle, we fall on grace. We fall on the one who grips us when we can no longer stand. We fall on the one who carries us. Can you fall on that today? Can you stumble toward grace today? Because the world will say, pick yourself up by your own bootstraps, and the moment that you can't do that anymore, the world says, oh, you just are worthless and an epic failure, and you blew it, and you're good for nothing now. And that is not the gospel. The gospel says, you are my son. You are my daughter. You are loved not by what you do, but by who you are and who I say you are. Daniel has some naysayers. Daniel continually has people that seem to be after him. And some of you may look and go, well, yeah, of course, because Daniel's kind of up there. He's got high rank, and the problem with climbing up the ladder is somebody's really wanting to always grab you and pull you back down. But I think this week I was reminded of a truth I often forget. I've got somebody after me 24/7. That 1 Peter tells us that the devil is like a, get this, roaring lion, running around looking for someone to devour and destroy. And who does he have his eyes set on? He has his eyes set on the people of God, the children of God. So you have an enemy, and I have an enemy. So when things don't go the way that we wish that they would sometimes go, we need to remember, oh yeah, I have an enemy. I have one that wants to seek to steal and kill and destroy me, but I also have a rescuer and a deliverer. And he says in that same verse, I have come to give you life and to give it to you to the full, more abundantly. That we would be filled with this beautiful, God-sized mind and heart that would cause us to tell God over and over and over and over again, I love you because you first loved me. I will be there with you because you will never leave me. So there is a miracle in this passage. An angel comes and closes the mouths of hungry lions. But I'm going to make a case today, and you can agree or disagree with me, that might not be the most powerful miracle that happens in this chapter. Here we go, Daniel 6. By the way, quick background, remember Belshazzar, writing on the wall last week, had a rather dismal end. Babylon fell. Now Persia has come to power, and Darius is one of the kings of the Persian and the Medes. Here we go. It pleased Darius, the new king, to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be throughout the whole kingdom, and over them 3 presidents, of whom Daniel was one, to whom these satraps should give account, so that the king might suffer no loss. Then this Daniel became distinguished above all the other presidents and satraps because an excellent spirit was in him. And the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. Then the presidents and the satraps sought to find a ground for complaint against Daniel with regard to the kingdom. But they could find no ground for complaint or any fault because he was faithful, and no error or fault was found in him. Then these men said, we should not find any ground for complaint against this Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of his God. Then these presidents and satraps came by agreement to the king and said to him, O King Darius, live forever. All the presidents of the kingdom, the prefects and the satraps, the counselors and the governors are agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an injunction that whoever makes petition to any god or man for 30 days, except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the injunction and sign the document so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked. Therefore, King Darius signed the document and injunction. When Daniel knew the document had been signed, he went to his house, where he had windows in his upper chamber open toward Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as he had done previously. Then these men came by agreement and found Daniel making petition and plea before his God. Then they came near and said before the king concerning the injunction, O king, did you not sign an injunction that anyone who makes petition to any god or man within 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? The king answered and said, the thing stands fast according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked. Then they answered and said before the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or the injunction you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. Then the king, when he heard these words, was much distressed and set his mind to deliver Daniel. And he labored till the sun went down to rescue him. Then these men came by agreement to the king and said to the king, Know, O king, that it is the law of the Medes and Persians that no injunction or ordinance that the king establishes can be changed. Then the king commanded, and Daniel was brought and cast into the den of lions. The king declared to Daniel, May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you." And a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet and with the signet of his lords, that nothing might be changed concerning Daniel. Then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and sleep fled from him. Then at break of day, the king arose and went in haste to the den of lions. As he came near to the den where Daniel was, he cried out in a tone of anguish. The king declared to Daniel, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God whom you serve continually been able to deliver you from the lions?" Then Daniel said to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him, and also before you, O king. I have done no harm." Then the king was exceedingly glad and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den, and no kind of harm was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. And the king commanded, and those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and cast into the den of lions, they, their children, and their wives. And before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones in pieces. Then King Darius wrote to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell on the earth, "Peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in all my royal dominion, people are to tremble in fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions." So this Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for your word, for your spirit, and for the promise of deliverance. Help us to see and hear your deliverance at this time. Help us to know it was for Daniel, but it's also for us, and that you're faithful to deliver your people from the lions that come into our lives. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. There's a reason, I think, why the lion is the king of the jungle. It is just such a dignified, majestic animal. And when Robert McAfoose and I were blessed with the opportunity to go to Kenya and Uganda, we took half a day on a safari. And you know you're going to see animals on a safari. And zebra are running around more plentiful than deer in Illinois, which takes a little while for you to get your head wrapped around. And when you first get there, you look and go, "Zebra, wow!" And you get your phone out and you take a picture and then go, "Wow, there's another zebra." And within like an hour you go, zebra is just the background of Kenya and Uganda. There's just zebras all over. But you go to this safari and you feel like you're guaranteed to see a lion, because after all, you pay for a safari and you're going to see a lion for sure. And my friend that has lived in Africa for a long time said, "Hey, just FYI, guys, we don't have a lot of time. I don't know if we're going to see a lion or not." And I immediately thought to myself, man, I really wish you would have told me that before I paid for the safari. If there is little to no chance of seeing a lion, like I've already seen enough zebras, I want to see a lion. And God blessed us with the opportunity to see a female lion, and she just was laying and she just was staring, and she was pretty close to the road, and we stopped right in front and we stared and we took video and we took our windows down and we were kind of getting closer, and then all of a sudden the female lion stood up and she began to walk toward, and immediately Tom, who you guys have met before, he rolls up the windows and he says, "Okay, we're done." and we're driving, and in the rear view mirror, we see this lion just very casually across the street. That power is present in a lion, right? And I heard sermons this week about Daniel in the lion's den, and one thing they said, make sure you don't make this sermon about animal kingdom lion stats and statistics. And my opening was about my experience with a lion in the wild, right? I completely violated what everybody said. Except I want to ask the question now, in Daniel chapter 6, who are the lions, really? Because what you have going on here is you have Daniel, who has served faithfully in a foreign land, seeking the welfare of this foreign place because of his love and devotion to God. He was uprooted, we learned weeks ago, when he was a teenager, from the place where his home and culture and the worship of Yahweh were. And he doesn't throw in the towel. And he doesn't assimilate to the culture where he is, but he also doesn't go into hiding. He says, I'm not going to stop being faithful to the worship of one true God, even when hardly anyone around me knows who this God is. And as I worship the one true God, I am going to pray that this one true God blesses people who don't even know the one true God. And look and says, really things shouldn't change today, right? But you know what? Some people would look and go, well, gee, Daniel seems to be faithful to this one true God, but is this one true God being faithful to Daniel? And the reason why they accuse in this way is because you get these other power people that create a coup and make up slander, or try anyway, to make up slander and lies about Daniel. Like they have a brainstorming meeting to try to figure out, how do we take this dude out? We don't like him. And then they go through the list. Has he embezzled any money? No, he hasn't. Has he tried to steal one of Darius's wives? No, he hasn't. Has he ever spoken badly about Darius? No, he hasn't. Has he ever spoken badly about any of us? No, he hasn't. And they're looking around, they're going, dang it. Nothing will stick to this guy. Oh yeah, though, wait a second. He has this one thing he does like clockwork. 3 times a day, he gets down on his knees and he opens up his windows and he looks out a certain direction and he prays. And he's been doing this over and over and over and over again. Maybe we get him. Maybe we get him on that. Then begin to go, okay, that guy, that gets a little traction there. And they're like, all right, but we got to figure out how the king will go for this, because the king, for whatever reason, he loves Daniel. Like, I know. Pride. Ego. That'll get the king. We will stroke the king's ego so much, and he will love it so much that he won't realize, as his ego is getting stroked, what he is actually agreeing to until it's too late. You know, all throughout the New Testament, we hear warnings, and in the Old Testament too, of be careful about seeking the praise of men over the praise of God. That when God calls Jeremiah to be a prophet, one of God's warnings to Jeremiah, when Jeremiah is afraid, God tells Jeremiah, if you are afraid of the people that you deliver this message to, then you should be afraid of them, and you will also be afraid of me. But if you fear me above all and worship and are devoted to me, you have nothing else to fear. That there is an invitation in the midst of fear and in the midst of struggle to say, whose applause do we want most? Jesus says about the religious leaders that are looking really, really good, that find the street corners, and all of a sudden the Holy Spirit gets a hold of them on the street corner. Very convenient location because everyone on one side can see them pray and everyone on the other side can see them pray. And Jesus says, well, they have their reward. All the people think they're really holy. But you shouldn't do that. When you go and pray, go quietly to your prayer closet and get down on your knees. And it doesn't matter if anybody else sees what you're up to. My Father in heaven sees, and he will reward you. But Darius doesn't, at least at this stage, know this God. And he is very powerful. And he likes applause. And when they come and pitch this idea to him of no one should give any request to anyone except you for 30 days, he goes, yeah, I think that'll work. I think that's a good idea. After all, I need to establish my dominance. And after 30 days' time, then we can worship all the other gods that everybody's okay with. But this is 30 days where you're devoted only to King Darius. And then just because the satraps may think later that he'll figure out what the trap is, it gets sealed in a law that cannot be changed. And we'll go back to that law that cannot be changed in a little bit. Look at verse 10. When Daniel knew the documents had been signed, he went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber open toward Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God as he had done previously. This verse is loaded, guys. When Daniel knew the document had been signed. And I'm just going to try to put myself in Daniel's shoes for a second. Oh, I can't pray to Yahweh for 30 days or I'm going to get thrown in the lion's den. Well, if I get thrown in the lion's den, then I'll be dead. And if I die, then I won't have opportunity to continue to witness to Darius and everyone else in this Persian Empire. And I know that God wouldn't want me to die, right? So maybe for 30 days, I'm not going to pray to Darius, but I'm not going to pray the way that I used to pray because, after all, this is a law of the land. And whatever the law of the land is, we're kind of forced to do, right? So maybe I'll just take a pause. Or at the very least, I think there'd be a strong temptation to procrastinate. But the moment that Daniel knows, he goes to the place of prayer. Why does he do this? Well, we get a little bit of a hint here. He had been doing it previously for years and years and years and years. This is a habit, but it's not a habit of routine. It is a devotion of love. I'll give you a quick example of habit of routine. I am a coffee drinker, and I am probably more faithful to drinking a cup of coffee in the morning than just about anything else in my life. And there's probably a problem with that. Because I can think of times where I have stood God up in morning prayer, but I've never skipped my coffee. But I have discovered that there was a season where I sat in the same chair and drank my coffee, usually summertime. I'm out the door a little bit later during the summer. And one day, I'd love to tell you, it's more than one day that I do this, but I didn't pick up yesterday's coffee cup. And I went blindly to set it was done, and I set my coffee cup down on the floor, and there was like this clink. Because the habit was so developed in the form of routine that I always consistently put my coffee cup in the same spot, and boom, it was already occupied. I'm like, I didn't know. It was a mindless habit that just developed. That's routine, though. I mean, I love coffee, but it doesn't matter really where I put it. It's just the habit I got into. But then there are other things that are really easy to do that also should be habit forming. It's not hard to tell a spouse or a child or a parent, I love you. And, you know, it's funny that sometimes when it comes to devotion to prayer or how often we take communion or something like that, we tend to sometimes think to ourselves, it's like, oh, well, I don't know that I want to do it all the time because I don't want it to lose its meaning. I don't want it to become mindless religious routines and calisthenics. It's really what Nick talked about, right? I said, well, God, help my heart get there to where this becomes a devotion of love and care. Daniel is consistently 3 times a day. And people go, oh, well, you know, if he's only doing 3 times a day, you know what I do? I follow 1 Thessalonians 5:17 that says pray continuously. So I'm always praying. Okay, good. I think Daniel did that too, actually. But you know what I've discovered when I use 1 Thessalonians 5:17 sometimes? And I'm embarrassed to say this, sometimes I use that verse as a cop-out. Let me give you an example. If I'm always praying, then I don't need designated times of prayer. How's that work in marriage? People in marriage say you should never stop dating your spouse. Well, First Dating 5:17 says, I'm always dating her. So I don't need designated times of taking her out because I'm always dating her. How's that going to fly? Or your job. Oh, I'm always working. You don't have designated times that you devote to work. And I'm not pushing for an either or here. I'm saying it's a both and. And that the one will motivate and draw to the other. That discipline and structure is a great grounds for more creativity and more inspiration. And God really has been speaking to me ironically this week about this because we had a prayer meeting for Haiti on Monday night, and it was a rich blessing. And we have had seasons in the life of our church here at the Bridge where we have had designated, devoted times for corporate prayer where we call on God. And times when the schedule gets busy and we go, and I go to myself, I'm like, well, we're a praying people. We are dedicated to 1 Thessalonians 5:17, so it's okay that it's been a long time since we've called a corporate prayer meeting. I'm not so sure Daniel would agree with us. Not only that, I think Daniel would go, are you kidding me? Why wouldn't you want to commune with the Creator God of the universe? That I have 3 highlights of my day, Daniel would say. And it is when I bow down and I kneel and I pray. And then he's looking toward Jerusalem. There's verses in 1 Kings that talk about if you ever disobey God and are pulled out of the promised land, you are to pray wherever you are, looking toward Jerusalem, because your deliverance will come from there. This is some 70 plus years that Daniel's saying, and we struggle to wait for like a few days. My deliverer is going to come from Jerusalem. God has promised, and I will look in that direction. And guys, there is something about posture in prayer. There's something that happens when I kneel in prayer. There's something that happens when I look at a visual that is supposed to remind me of things like this cross. There's something that happens. And I don't have to explain it all to know something happens when I do that. Oh, I don't really need to pray physically because I pray in my heart. Okay. My heart is kneeling right now. I'm not sure if a heart can kneel. God gave you knees. And sometimes you need to get down on your knees to pray. It just reminds you. It's an act of humility that takes place that is powerful here. And then Daniel keeps the windows open. There is and I don't want to exalt Daniel, and we're going to talk a little bit about who's even more exalted here, but Daniel could have at least closed the windows, right? I think in some ways Daniel knows he might be set up here. But it doesn't stop him, because he knows that the friend that sticks closer than a brother is never going to let him go. Guys, I think the miracle, the bigger miracle, is not that God sends an angel to close the mouths of lions. The greater miracle is that Daniel still goes to his home and prays. He can't get there apart from the Spirit of God working in his life. And as I say, I think that may be the bigger miracle here. I'm saying that and recognizing we measure miracles differently, right? If there's something like that breaks the scientific order of things, then we go, okay, that's a miracle. And we look at this and go, okay, well, the dude was just solid in praying. That's a miracle, guys. It's also a miracle that God invites you to. Chances are you may not even be able to see a lion in the wild. Yeah, you can go to the zoo. That's cool too. But it's not about lions, right? At least the animal lion. It's about, God, give me grace and fill me in such a way to where I will kneel in prayer no matter what lion comes my way. That I will know that you are God and you are good and that you've got me. So, moving to the next scene, he is spotted. If there were smartphones back then or video cameras, they would have recorded this and put it on every social media platform they could find. And Daniel would have been found out as the one who was guilty beyond guilt. What's amazing, though, they call him the exile, one of the exiles from Judah. They're prejudiced, they're disdainful of this man. But what's amazing, it says when the king in verse 14 heard these things, he was much distressed. Natalie, in her email writing this week, which I encourage you to read if you haven't read it yet, talks about a double deliverance that happens here. God delivers Daniel from the lions, but God delivers Darius from himself. And that begins to happen here in this moment. Because I think as Daniel realizes, Darius realizes, oh no, this guy that has only been good to me, and I love him, and I care about him, and what can I do? And he is the most powerful man in the empire right now. And you know what? He has all day to come up with a way to wiggle out of this, and he can't. You know something else I think God wants to teach us? At the end of the day, no matter how powerful your friend or family member are, or you are, some things you can't wiggle out of. Some things your friend can't get you out of. And that he realizes in this is like, my security and faith is only strong when it's put wholly and solely on God. Darius reaches the end of himself when he says to Daniel, "Oh, Daniel, I did everything I could all day and it fell short. My only hope now is that your God will deliver you. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. The wages of sin is death." Darius has a dying moment here. All of his resources, all of his influence, all of his power cannot move away from the law that is set in stone. And God has also delivered a law to us. And that law is set in stone. And anyone who says, "I sure hope God grades on the curve and lets me into heaven," doesn't understand how set in stone the law is, and doesn't understand that the law requires 100% perfection. And no matter who you are not perfect. No matter how good you are, you cannot be good enough. And Darius learns that by throwing in every favor, every power, everything, and then eventually says, I've got to deliver you to the lions. And then it's kind of interesting that the lions sleep at night. The mouths are closed. And it seems as though Daniel is restful and worshipful. But Darius is restless and sleepless, and he won't eat, and he wants no entertainment brought to him. Guys, never underestimate how God can speak to you in the midst of a sleepless night. Sleep is good and godly. Nobody believes that when they're in college. But then eventually you begin to realize, oh wait, sleep is good and godly. But God will sometimes cause us not to sleep in order to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, boy, I was played the fool. I was played the fool by these lions that came and tried to stroke my ego, but ended up tricking me. They gave me just enough to get me to swallow the pill. Somebody said one time that Satan will give us candy-coated cyanide poison. And that it will be candy-coated because the candy will get us to go, oh yes, this is what I want, but we don't know what is underneath that candy coating. But the amazing thing is, as it's candy coated, and then the candy coating begins to rub off and we realize we're dying, that we've been poisoned into believing lies, we call out, and God comes to the rescue to heal. Daniel goes into the lions. Darius, I think he prays. He's violating the very law he set into stone. Darius should have been in the lion's den with Daniel on this night because he's praying, the God of Daniel, deliver, deliver, deliver. And then this was also convicting. At daybreak, as soon as the sun comes up, Darius runs to this place, hoping Daniel's still alive. Sometimes my prayers sound like this. God, please help this person. And then I never check up on the person. Now, we're all forgetful and other things come up, and I don't want to say that when you do that or I do that, that our prayers are not meaningful in the moment. But I think faith-filled prayer expects something to happen. and we don't get to define what that thing is that might happen. But whenever you're praying for someone and then you're checking up on them and you're visiting them and you're wanting to find out, hey, how's it going now? You're believing, okay, there may be hope still. Darius goes to a place where lions are clearly hungry. We're going to find that out later. And then it gets opened up, and Daniel's very few words here are, my God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths. Guys, I wish I had better eyes for the spiritual realm. Because I think if I could see the spiritual realm, God is sending angels to shut so many lions for you and for me and your friends and your family. And if God gave us sight to see those things, when we sing about Jesus' victory over death and the cross and the grave, we would not be able to do anything but clap and cheer and applaud, because he's hitting home run after home run and touchdown after touchdown and scoring goal after goal. And I can keep going in sports analogy, but I think you get the point. Jesus is the victorious one who shuts the lion and the other lions that come into our lives. And may God give us eyes to see that at work. Amen. So, there is also judgment that comes too. When the king realizes that he has been tricked, he throws the lions to the lions, and also the wives and the children, and we can look at this and go, how's that work? Well, there's actually, interestingly enough, a verse in Deuteronomy, and I can give you chapter and verse later, that talks about in Israel when someone has done something guilty, unless they are an accomplice to it, that they should not be judged. We look at Achan with his sin, and it seems as though his family was an accomplice to it, which is why that happened. This is Persia. But the main point for today is, when you sin, your sin never just affects you. That when you do something wrong, there are always innocent people affected by your sin and by your disobedience. The lions, before they hit the ground, overpower them, and then Darius writes, the God of Daniel is the living God, enduring forever. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders. Daniel is a foreshadow of a greater one. Because Daniel was light to people that walked in darkness. But in the fullness of time that we come up on, an Advent coming up, we discover that Daniel was not enough, as great as he was, that we need another. And that this other was falsely accused in a mock trial, much like Daniel's trial. He was arrested, and he was put in a tomb that was sealed according to a law that could not be changed. But he didn't stay there. What's amazing is the women on that Easter Sunday run to the tomb, and they're wondering, how are we going to get in? Who is going to roll the stone away? And God sent an angel so that the women could see. And not just so that the women could see, God sent an angel to open that stone so that the entire world can see. That just like God sent an angel to shut the mouths of lions, God sent Jesus, his one and only Son, to deliver a fatal blow of the lion that roars around seeking to devour you and I. And then he becomes the greater lion, the lion from the tribe of Judah, who now reigns. He's risen and he reigns. And he says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. Come to me, all of you who are sick and sore. And I will be your healing balm. I will be your help. I will be your hero. I will love you, and my love for you will never let you go. So yes, today's about the gospel. Today is about Jesus' deep, deep love for you and for me. And Jesus wants to save you from yourself, but he also wants to save you from those religious routines. He wants you to date him and to go on dates with him. He wants you to say, this moment on this day is a holy moment right now, and nothing else will get in the way of it. I need my Father, and he says I can always come to him. And that we would earmark these holy moments, both in private devotion and in corporate worship, to say, no, these are non-negotiable moments because my God non-negotiably went to the cross for me. He has done all of this and more for me. And that our response would naturally be, I want to build my life on you. I want to trust you. I want more and more devotion to you. And guys, he's worth it. And the more that you worship and pray and praise him, the more of his love you're going to see. And when the lions come, and they will still come, you will be looking at the one with power to shut the mouths of lions. Let's pray. Father, thank you for your faithfulness in this place today. Thank you for reminding us of the gospel. And thank you, God, that you are shutting mouths of lions around us all the time. Help us to see them. Help us to see your angels. Increase our trust in you. Help us to be a praying people because you never stop praying for us. And help us to hear the prayers that you pray on our behalf. Help us to pray for each other. And thank you, Father, for Jesus, who died and rose and now reigns. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Sometimes we don't spend time reflecting and remembering. We just kind of race to the next thing and the next thing. So I'd like to invite you, as we approach Thanksgiving week, to ask God in these moments, God, what have you done for me? Would you show me? Would you remind me? And give me a thankful heart that leads to worship and praise. Because guys, there are miracles all around us all the time. And sometimes speaking out those miracles is a way to glorify him. So just have a moment, and when these guys feel led, they'll begin to lead us in that closing song.
side. So heaven is real and death is a lie. I wanna hear voices of angels above, singing as one. Hallelujah. Holy, holy, God Almighty, the great I am, who is worthy, none beside thee. God Almighty, the great I am. I wanna be near to your heart, loving the world and hating the dark. I wanna see dry bones living again, singing as one. Oh, hallelujah. Holy, holy, God Almighty, the great I am, who is worthy, none beside thee. God Almighty, the great I am, the great I am. He's the great I am. Oh, yes, you are, God. The great I am. No other The mountains shake before you, the demons run and flee. At the mention of your name, King of Majesty, there is no power in hell or any who can stand before the power and the presence of great I am, the great I am, the great I am, yes. The great I am, the great I am, the great I am, yes. Hallelujah. Holy, holy, God Almighty, the great I am, who is worthy, none beside thee. God Almighty, the great I am, the great I am, the great I am. He's the great I am. The mountains shake before you, the demons run and flee. At the mention of your name, King of Majesty, there is no power in hell
great I am is present tense. I am. He also was and he will forever be, but he meets us in that I am moment. And we're taking a break from Daniel and moving to a chapter in Romans beginning next week. It's Romans chapter 8, as we reflect on the great I am coming to be with us. What we're going to see at the beginning of that chapter is there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, and there is no separation for the love of God for those who are in Christ Jesus. So it unites us to him in a powerful way. And as we continue to worship, the goal now is you had a specific time today where you worshiped. You have another opportunity tonight at 6 o'clock. Come back, bring somebody with you, and continue to hear from him. But as we walk out the doors, here's kind of a charge benediction, okay? 1 Thessalonians 5:17 takes over your life, okay? This is that 3 times a day you go, you kneel, the formal time, but then that we would leave saying, now we're praying continuously, looking for how God is at work. Jeremiah would have been a contemporary prophet of Daniel. And one thing that he tells us in Jeremiah 29:13 is, you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart. And man, I get to do a lot of weddings, officiate a lot of weddings, which means I get to hear a lot of proposal stories. You want to talk about a story where somebody is going all out with all their heart. It's when somebody decides to ask somebody to marry them, right? And God is saying, hey, I went all out for you to find you and choose you and take you to myself. And our response, we get to go all out for him. So let's receive this benediction. And now, God, to you, the one who went all out with all your heart to bring us back to you. May you fill us with your spirit and give us the reminder of the faithful one who is always there. Help us to be faithful, to have specific times to worship you and pray to you. And may our whole lives just overflow so that the world may know that you sent Jesus to be Savior. May your light shine through us. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Back here at 6 o'clock tonight. Come back and bring somebody with you. God bless you.